while we're on Zoom? Okay, I can't hear you.
Sorry, yes, it is.
Okay, I
Roll
don't know
call.
if that was you or me. I got scared there for a minute. Okay, and just for the benefit of when I listen to the tape and I do the minutes, since I can't see you, are there any members, I can see members of the board. Beth Rosenblum is present, Dorian Jasinski, Dave Nixon, Barry Rubenstein, Jay Dietz. I see Mark Purple, of course, our host and Assistant Town Administrator, Vanessa Hale. And do we have more folks participating with us today? Can we identify for the recording? I can't hear you, Vanessa. Are you muted?
Sorry, I thought that was turned back on. There are several folks listening in as attendees.
Okay, and can we, to the extent we have town officials with us, can we get a list? Is that appropriate? Do you do that? Do you list who was there?
Sure, if you want. It's Amy Berry, Brian Ballantyne, Mariana Sorensen, Melissa Danza.
Hey, could you
Paul
slow down? Because I'm gonna,
Sure.
oh, actually, this will be on the record. Okay, Sorensen, Barry,
Melissa Danza,
yeah?
Paul Sabelli,
Mm-hmm,
Ryan Donovan,
mm-hmm.
and Tim Davis.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Vanessa.
So they can, if you have any questions for any of those folks during the meeting, they can be brought over to speak.
Great, that's helpful. Normally we would see them in the room. So thanks very much. All right, our first order of business is 2A, administrative business, approval of minutes of June 3rd, 2020. The minutes haven't been sent to the board. Prior to the meeting, the chair will waive the reading. And are there any corrections to the minutes of June 3rd? I have one. You may have noticed that when I typed this, I called so this is pages 2 and 3 of your packet. It's titled agenda and it should have been titled meeting minutes. So I will make that change in the final. Does anybody else have any corrections for the minutes of June 3rd? Nope. All right. So the minutes are approved with the change that they will be titled meeting minutes. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to 2B, pursuant to.
Sorry,
sorry.
that was me.
Oh,
That's
okay,
my husband. He has great timing all the time. Sorry.
all right, no problem. 2B, election of chair and clerk pursuant to bylaw, section 16C. The board meets and elects a clerk and chair. I refer you to section 16C of the new bylaw for FY 21. Any questions about elections? All right. So the chair will entertain a motion to elect somebody chair of the personnel board for the next year.
I move to elect Betsy Rosenblum, chairman of the
I
committee.
second that.
I would
Happily
not.
second that.
All right, so we have a motion, all in favor of electing Betsy Rosenblum as chair of the personnel board, your name and your vote, please. And I'll just go by who I see on the screen in that order. Ms. Jasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nixon,
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes,
Mr. Dietz.
Yes,
Ms. Rosenblum accepts and votes in the affirmative. Thank you all. Now, the chair will entertain motions to elect a clerk. And this role has largely been ceremonial under this current board. The main job of the clerk is to do the minutes, and our present clerk is not doing the minutes. I'm currently doing the minutes, but the clerk is another officer to step in for purposes of authorizing payments from the personnel board budget in the absence of the board meeting or in the absence of the chair. So, do we want to elect a clerk, and who would like to be the clerk?
well, I think Ms. Jasinski has done such a fine job. I think we should.
Thanks, Barry. It's been a tough road.
Do I hear a motion to elect Ms. Jasinski as clerk for the fiscal year?
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Again, I'll go across as I see you. Ms. Jazinski, you're the first one in the view.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Rubenstein,
Yes,
Mr. Dietz,
yes,
Mr. Nixon,
Yes,
Ms. Rosenblum votes in the affirmative. And I guess I should, for roll call purposes, let you identify yourselves. So next time I call you, just say your name and then your vote. But this will be clear from the recording and is undisputed. All right. Congratulations, Ms. Jazinski.
And I accept.
All right. Yeah, thank you for your willingness to serve. Okay, moving on to 3A reports. We have a chair's report. A town meeting approval of the FY21 bylaw. I don't know how many of you were present at our town meeting. It was fabulous. Congratulations from me to everybody who put that together, with a special asterisk in the record books for our town clerk. It was just phenomenal, as those of you who attended or participated, I'm sure agree, with Mother Nature chipping in. So we have a new bylaw. We'll deal with the consequences of that a little further down under 5A. You also have, I'm sorry, I can't physically give you a copy of the new bylaw. This is mine. It's in a folder. So Ms. Hale, thank you. Ms. Hale has posted or caused to be posted the new FY21 bylaw on the personnel webpage. So if you haven't downloaded it already, thank you, Vanessa, and members of the board. We have a new SAP. All right. Page 4 in your packet is a ledger sheet from the town accountant. And as you know, we voted not to spend any more money for the rest of the year. No, we hadn't incurred or encumbered any money. So when we had been requested by the finance team to curtail spending where possible, and we decided to do that. However, something had come to my attention early this week. I want to call out Melissa Danza, who's with us today. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa called to my attention that we had outstanding funds in the tuition reimbursement line item. So if you would look at page 4 in your packet, that's line item 51,900. You'll see that we allocated an original budget of 5,000, and 2,000 has been dispersed and 3,000 is remaining. And Ms. Danza asked if the board might consider giving her an additional grant out of that money. And it was last minute, and I do appreciate her bringing this to my attention. So I looked back at this, and you all may recall that this board approved $5,000. Of course, it's conditioned on receiving paperwork showing course completion of a grade of B or better and payment by the grantee. But we awarded $2,000 to Ms. Danza, $2,000 to Ms. Esposito in the Board of Selectmen's office, and $1,000 to Ms. Sorensen at the library. So as of today, there's 3,000 remaining. I'm advised that Ms. Esposito is not seeking reimbursement and Ms. Sorensen is. So we have 2,000 unspent. That's Lori's grant. So this board can discuss that today, decide if they want to return that money to the general treasury, or whether or not they want to disperse the full 5,000. And we have Ms. Danza and Ms. Sorensen with us. Yesterday, I supplemented your packet with some documentation from Ms. Danza, in which she demonstrated coursework over grade B and also expenses exceeding the 2,000. I don't know if you got to see Ms. Sorensen's paperwork. It was coming into me in pieces. Some of it was not, I got some that wasn't redacted, some that may have been overly redacted. And in the last 5 minutes before this meeting, I tried to send it all through to you. I hope you've seen it. I have seen documentation from Ms. Sorensen attesting to expenses well in excess of $2,000. She is in a program at Simmons in library, and she is here with us so she can answer any questions. Has everybody seen the documentation from Ms. Sorensen?
Yeah, I have it in front of me.
Okay, there's a cover memo from Mr. Donovan. So I just want to make sure the rules are, we can't discuss something if people don't have it in front of them, so. And there's also a transcript showing excellent grades, and congratulations, Ms. Sorensen, on a GPA of 3.8. That's fantastic. So. And these pages aren't numbered. There's a memo from Mr. Donovan, and then attached, and then a bank statement that's been lined out. And then a transcript showing it's a 3.811. Okay, so as a threshold matter, does this board, I'll leave it open to the board, if you want to entertain dispersing the remaining 2,000 or sending it back to the treasury. And if you decide you want to disperse it, then we decide how we want to do that as between these two employees. So I'll open it up to the board.
How much has Danza received so far, total?
That is in the supplemental packet, Jay. She has received, so the original grant was Danza 2,000, Esposito 2,000, Sorensen 1,000. Ms. Danza did submit paperwork for the full 2,000. She's the only one who submitted paperwork previously.
So she got the full 2.
Yes, she did.
At a minimum, we should at least give everybody the same amount if we have the money. So if Sorensen's down 1,000 from Danza, we should at a minimum give her at least 1,000 so that everybody gets the same amount if we have the money. So
I
Okay.
agree.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. At the time that we voted on this, you may recall, it was back in the fall. We did distinguish through nothing to do with Ms. Sorensen personally, but that she was a part-time employee. We had $5,000. The suggestion was made to go 2,000 for the full-time employees and 1,000 for the part-time.
Yeah, she's a part-time employee. I don't think she should be entitled to the same amount as a full-time employee. I would disagree with Jay.
I did not remember she was
Yeah,
part-time.
she's
I did.
part-time, and I don't think part-timers should be entitled to the same amount of tuition reimbursement. That's my opinion.
All right, so if you just want to wait a minute, I can pull out the minutes and I'll tell you what we said. We do this fairly early in the year, so people will know what's coming.
No, that's fine.
Uh,
I mean, if she's part-time, then that's if it's going to be half, it's half.
So this was discussed and approved on October 3rd, 2019. Mr. Nixon proposed that we fund 2,000 for each of the full-time employees and 1,000 for the part-time employee. So that's how we came up with. That's that, just confirming. So does anybody else wish to speak? So is it the sense of the board not that we should spend the money, spend down this category and not return it to the general treasury? Is that what I'm sensing?
Are we sure that Lori Esposito is not going to, because we awarded the money, so.
Yes, Dorian, we are. Sorry, don't mean to cut you off. Upon receiving Ms. Danza's request, and again, I have to call out Melissa Danza. I didn't catch this. Nobody else on the personnel team caught it. It was Ms. Danza astutely checking our packet for the week and checking the budget and seeing that there was unspent funds and asking if she could have that money. So none of this would have come to my attention if it weren't for Melissa. I just want to make that clear. I don't know if that's relevant to anybody. So as soon as I found that out, I told Melissa I would put it on the docket. I conferred with Vanessa and we sent notice to the others, and I did receive notice in writing from Ms. Esposito for a variety of reasons. She was not able to complete her coursework.
I wanted to make sure that she wasn't going to come back to us like in a few weeks and say, hey, I just changed my mind. Okay.
Thank you, Dorian. And the reason to do this, it became quite a rush right at the end. I thank Vanessa for her assistance in gathering the documentation because it is July 1st. And Vanessa, I'm not sure, but we have a few days leeway, right, to get this through, but not too much.
Yeah, it is something that would need to be processed this week, which is why I asked the chair if she would agree to put it on today.
Yep, we can't wait until next month.
So I think that I personally don't have a problem with it, but we're setting a precedent. If we do that, are we gonna do this every year? If there's money left that we're gonna reallocate it to different people who have applied earlier. I mean, we're going to set a precedent here, so
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it. She's taken the courses. She does a great job, but I'm looking at process. So if we do this now, are we going to do this every single year? If someone doesn't complete their courses and now there's extra money, are we going to reallocate it to other people that have already applied? So we have to kind of look at that.
Okay, thank you for your comments. 2 points of information. When we had the original budget discussion, because you may recall last year we had an issue with, if we spent a slightly different issue, if we spend down our entire tuition reimbursement budget, but we have money in other line items, could we then give somebody more tuition reimbursement? And my recollection and the reading of the minutes from the sense of the board, and I think Ms. Jasinski was very adamant, if we had money unspent in other categories, we would not approve that money. But we never reached the issue of if we have money unspent in the specific line item. So the $5,000 indicates this board's willingness to fund $5,000. And I also recall at our, I think it was our first Zoom meeting, when I was introducing you, we had in the packet the memo from the finance board asking us to be careful about expenses and only spend on required things and cut back on any discretionary spending. I think we all agreed that tuition reimbursement was not considered discretionary. It was an obligation of the board and we would pay it. And I think Mr. Dietz, you made a comment to that effect.
But we did actually meet it, though. We did give everybody the allotted amount. So if
Yep.
we have extra, we should do what's correct and give the money back. Like Dorianne said, if we're going to give people money this time, then if we have money next time, are we going to have to give it to them and keep having to give it to them over and over?
Yeah, I don't know that, I don't know if we have Mr. Purple, our personnel director with us, or Ms. Hale. Have you encountered this situation before? And is there anything you wish to share with the board before they vote?
So I don't think we've encountered this before. I do agree that, you know, it's kind of important, I think, to set up, something that is consistent. And so I see what Jay and Dorian saying. So yeah, like I said, I'll leave it to the board's discretion as what do you want to do, but I do think what you do in this particular instance may set, you know, a path forward as to how this stuff will be handled, you know, in the future.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Purple. Yeah, and I know it's hard for this board. You're just receiving this information the week of the board meeting. And you are, I agree, we're setting a precedent for the future. And you haven't had that much time to sit on the issue. Anybody else?
The way I look at it is if our policy is 2,000 a year for full-time, 1,000 a year for part-time, regardless if we have an extra 30,000 or 3,000, our policy is it's 2,000, 1,000, that's what you get. Like Dorianne said, we're gonna get in a slippery slope every year if we have extra money coming back. And if every department is giving back something, if we can give $5,000 back and that helps out the town, then great. And we're not going back on anything that we obligated ourselves to.
I agree with Jay.
All right, any other comments? All right, the chair will ask, do we have a motion to leave? Oh, so we do have to deal with Ms. Sorensen because she properly applied for 1,000. And if you're good with her paperwork, it would be 2,000 left. So did everybody see Ms. Sorensen's paperwork? And I have the authority on behalf of this board to approve her tuition reimbursement, but just so we're all clear, we will reimburse her 1,000. Okay,
Yes.
we don't
Yes.
need a vote on that. Okay,
Yes.
so the vote would be whether or not, so the vote would be to return $2,000 to the general treasury unspent in the.
Yep.
451,900 tuition reimbursement line item. And I guess if we don't vote to do anything, if we pass on voting, that's what will happen. Mark and Vanessa, am I correct with that? So we really, by not taking a vote, the money will just go back, right?
That's correct. Yeah, anything
Okay.
that is unspent is going to go back to the general fund.
So in
Right.
order to alter that, we would need an affirmative vote to spend it elsewhere. And I don't sense that there's any motion to do that. So the record will reflect that the board did not take any action on the request for additional funding. And the $2,000 will go back to the general treasury. Okay, less 1,000. And Mariana, thank you for being here today. Thank you both ladies. And I will sign off after this meeting on whatever documentation is required to process Mariana's payment of 1,000. Okay, any questions on this?
Nope.
I can't,
Right thing to do.
all right. Moving on, ready to move on?
Yep.
Thank you all. Okay, we're moving on to 3B, report on new hires, Ms. Hale. And that is page, sorry, I've got so many supplements
Aye.
now.
Page 5.
Thank you. You are all so helpful. Page 5. Vanessa, you have the floor.
So in your packet is a memo regarding 2 new employees. One, a part-time administrative assistant in the town clerk's office that will be starting next Monday, July 6th. And actually today, first day of the new fiscal year, is a great day to have our new accountant on board. So we're very happy that Carla McAuliffe is in place as of this morning as our new town accountant. And we certainly give all our thanks to Heidi Krieger for her many years of service in the accounting office. She did retire as of yesterday. She'll be staying on in a temporary capacity for a few hours a week to help us close out the fiscal year and wrap everything up on that end.
Thank you, Vanessa. I have a question about the new hire notification. Both of these have pay rates. I note that the town accountant is $43.75. How was that pay rate set?
That was approved by Mr. Purple as in recognition of Carla's service as a town accountant in the past, as well as her prior service also included working in our own school district as well as the Wayland School District. So based on many years of local government experience in municipal finance.
And is that per contract?
No, this is not a contract. Heidi Krieger did have a contract, but this is under the SAP, no employment contract.
Okay, so if I turn to my FY21 SAP, I would find this at midpoint or below. Do you happen to know where it falls?
Hang on one second.
So the town accountant is grade 8. That
Correct.
is an hourly minimum of $38.84. Midpoint would be $46.61.
Correct.
Maximum. Okay, so this hourly salary is between minimum and midpoint, and that gave Mr. Purple the authority under section 9
Yes.
to set it. Okay. And Miss Chen, administrative assistant in the town clerk's office. This is an SAP position. We have a request in our packet today. So this pay rate has not actually been set. Is that correct?
Correct. This is a
All right.
request pending.
Okay, so it's in there just in case. All right. Thank you very much for the notice. Appreciated. And now we are on to 4 consent agenda. I left this in case we had any last minute performance evaluations, but I have nothing on this. So we're on to 5A.
Betsy, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Vanessa, did you send us the new SAP, a copy of the new SAP? Because I can't find it.
No, it's on the website. I can email it to you right now, though, Dorian. It was
If
posted
you
on
wouldn't
the.
mind, emailing that to me, just so I have that for my
Sure, I'll
records.
do that right now.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
send it to
Laura.
everyone.
All right, thank you.
And for the record, anyone who may be listening, Vanessa, do we have people listening that we wouldn't necessarily know are listening, or do you know who's?
Yes, on YouTube, there is one person watching on YouTube.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very
The
much.
people that watch any of our public meetings on YouTube, it's not identified who they are.
Thank you. So just for the record, if you go to the Town of Southborough and click on Boards and Committees, go to the webpage for the Personnel Board, you will see the SAP posted there. All right. So now we are on, are you satisfied, Dorian? Was that it?
Yes, I'm fine. I just want to get a copy of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. 5A FY21 Personnel Bylaw. I put this on here. I spoke with Mark and Vanessa in a pre-meeting where we discussed the agenda. And I asked them if anybody ever goes back after town meeting and has a specific format for communicating any changes. And I think the answer was no. So I thought perhaps that was the responsibility of this board. There were several changes to the SAP that I think we ought to tell folks about. Those were outlined at town meeting. I also, it's in the handout that says proposed revisions, section by section detail. So we hit on a few things, including a new tuition reimbursement policy. So I wanted to discuss with the board how they wanted to if they wanted to communicate these changes and how they wanted to do that. And in that regard, you may recall, we took a look at tuition reimbursement this year. The provisions for applying and getting a grant were detailed in the SAP. And we said, hey, what if we took it out of the SAP and put it in a policy? And we did that at a meeting back some time ago. And that is in your packet, the final policy, page 6 and 7, which was approved by the board. And we approved it on November 13th, but of course it was subject to town meeting agreeing to the change, which was taking it out of the SAP. So here we are on July 1st. It was approved. The SAP no longer has this process. When you look at your SAP, I will read it since Dorian doesn't have one. If you go to section 11B, is it B? 11I, hang on a sec. No, sorry, 11I2. All those lengthy provisions, paragraphs 2, 3, 4 now say tuition reimbursement. The town may offer tuition reimbursement to eligible full-time and part-time employees as prescribed by personnel policy enacted under this bylaw. So this policy at pages 6 and 7 of the packet was approved by the Personnel Board and I believe is enacted by the change in the SAP. If someone wants to separately enact it and vote it in, that's fine. But we have a new policy now. So this and other changes to the SAP, including no more probationary reviews, I think these ought to be communicated to everybody who's got an SAP employee or is an SAP employee. So I open it up to the board. That's the issue, how you would like to go about informing folks of these changes.
Madam Chair, if I could suggest, I think, you spent an awful lot of time putting that document together as to what's changing and the rationale behind it. And I think if you simply tweak it from proposed to approved, that document is very informative as to what's changed and why. And it could simply be that you put a short email out to the departments and with that as an attachment. And I think that that would probably be more than adequate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Purple, for the suggestion. Saves doing a whole new document. Members of the board, comments?
That works for me.
Yeah, works for me also.
Okay, all right. Does anybody need to wait till our meeting in August to see it? Or do you want to authorize me to send it out?
Authorize you.
Yeah,
Okay, and I would also include, I'll attach the tuition reimbursement policy to it. And Vanessa, if you would have Tom or whoever does posting, can you put this tuition reimbursement policy on our webpage
Yep, I can post that.
under policies? Excellent. Okay,
And do we need to vote to authorize you to do that, Betsy?
well, we're all here together and we're authorizing Vanessa to
Okay.
post the policy.
Yeah.
And it appears in the packet in the final. What happened was Jay, I don't know if you remember, Jay had drafted, this initiative came from Jay. Jay had drafted a policy. Then I worked with him to make it, I got to get in there with my legal stuff and earn my fees. And then when we cleaned it up, the board approved it.
Yep.
And then it was subject to, we didn't want to leave it without a policy. It was subject to the approval of the SAP, which was delayed. So now we have a policy. And it can just go up. I don't think it needs a,
Okay,
okay.
just checking.
And then the board is authorizing me, it's a sense of the board that I'm authorized to send this out. And Vanessa or Mark, I'd like to get together with you and make sure I have a current list of department managers with SAP employees, and also make sure we get the boards and committees, because I know those
Okay.
chairs change. So if Vanessa could get me a current list, I know I have to every July I need to update the list. I have a list of boards and committee chairs for the boards and committees that have SAP employees. And they'll need to get this too, since those employees are eligible. Okay, so the board is authorizing me to get together with Vanessa, come up with a list, and send out a summary of changes.
Yes.
All right. Good, thank you very much. We are on 5B, employee performance evaluations and salary increases. We have a couple of items under this. So this is a 2 or 3 part discussion depending on how you look at things. So the first item is synchronizing all of the employee evaluation or review dates, PED or PRD, whatever you want to call it. It's not anniversary dates, to July 1st. That's 5B1. So you may recall Mr. Ballantyne joined us at our last meeting on June 3rd. Oh, I see he has joined us. Welcome, Mr. Ballantyne. Mr. Ballantyne was with us on June 3rd, and he specifically asked this board for guidance on communicating to department heads on the reviews and how the synchronization is going to work. And we got off on a tangent, and I didn't realize until I was listening to the recording and doing the minutes that we did not give him the guidance that he requested. So I reached out to him and I apologized for that, and told him we would do it this week and get him on the call. So thank you. And you all may also recall at the conclusion of our discussion on June 3rd, this is also in the minutes, Mr. Dietz volunteered to assist with the spreadsheet and the pro rating for the synchronization, because that was getting a little complicated. And since this concept of synchronizing all review dates to July 1st started with Mr. Dietz, and he was the man with the numbers, he volunteered to work with Mark and or Brian to make that happen.
Yep.
So I became aware.
Brian did all the work. So let me throw that back out to Brian.
Okay, thank you. So I became aware last week, now we're getting into 5B2, but it's all of a piece. As a consequence of Mr. Dietz meeting with Mr. Ballantyne, Ms. Hale, and Mr. Purple, some additional substantive issues came out relating to personnel reviews and process. And Mr. Dietz wanted to get something on the agenda. So I asked him to generate a memo, and that is in your packet. I gave you the whole history here. So looking at page 8 would be Brian's original memo. After we asked him to synchronize dates, he gave us a memo with some ways that we could do that. And we voted the budget neutral option. And then he had a packet. In the packet at page 10 is a memo that Mr. Ballantyne submitted that was in the June 3rd packet. You may know all this. I just wanted you to have it for background. And page 11 is a new memo for today's meeting. And this is a result of a meeting Mr. Dietz had with the town administrators, Ms. Hale, Mr. Purple, Mr. Ballantyne, and some additional recommendations. So before I open it up to Mr. Dietz and Mr. Purple and to the board, as a threshold matter, there were a couple things I just wanted to say. One, thank you for approving, electing me to be chair. That signals to me that you all either really don't want to do this or you're really super happy with the way I do things, or maybe a little bit of both. So my philosophy as chair is that when I am contacted by a member of the board for an item to go on the agenda that has anything to do with the jurisdiction of the board, I will put it on the agenda. I don't know if that's universal, I don't know if chairs maintain the right to not put things on the agenda, but my practice would be if it's coming from a board member, out of respect to them, I will put it on the agenda. However, I was really confused about this particular request. I think part of my confusion relates to the use of the Office of Personnel Board letterhead. So just to sequence this, Mr. Dietz contacted me, told me he had something to put on the agenda. I said, great. I always tell people, put something in writing so the board can think about it ahead of time. And then this memo came to me 48 hours later on stationery that I don't know if I've ever seen before, but it was from Jay. So I mentioned this to Jay, I mentioned this to Vanessa. The use of the official letterhead was confusing to me. It suggested that it was something official from the board. So I would ask that we not use this letterhead unless the board has authorized some action to be taken or has authorized me as chair to issue something in its name. I just find it confusing. I don't know if anybody else did. You read this and it kind of sounds like we've done something that I don't think we've done yet that we're just discussing. So small minor detail, let's not use the letterhead while we're still in a discussion mode. And that's all I have. And then I'll open this up to Mr. Dietz, since this is his proposal for the board. And please, let's not exit this conversation without getting something down from Mr. Ballantyne that we want to send. Regardless of what we all come up with today, we need to put something in writing for our department heads. So thanks, that's my speech.
I mean, to keep it easy, we were looking at, obviously, we were all talking about combining the dates and just making one anniversary date so we don't have to do a review every single month or every single meeting, and it's all done at once. What Brian was doing was we were looking at on the spreadsheet how many people have recently had their reviews. So what we were thinking was anybody that's had a review within the last couple of months, we wouldn't need to re-review them again. We can go off what their last review was. Anybody that's had a review maybe 7 months or longer, then we can redo their review and go from there. But one of the things we were thinking of is when this new piece goes out to all of the managers, letting everybody really knowing that we're doing this new policy, that it shouldn't be coming from Mark or Vanessa, that the email should, and the messaging should be coming from the personnel board that we're making this change, because it's not on Mark and them to be communicating that change. It's a personnel board change. So I think that's where that should be coming from.
Hey, I have a question. So what rate, if I can, what increase do the people who had evaluations between February and June, what increase do they get starting July 1?
It'd be a prorated increase from whatever their last one was to this, whatever their last increase rate was. So if they got 2.5, they'd get a prorated portion of 2.5 for 4 months.
So they wouldn't be eligible to get 3% as other people might get.
Because, well, that's just because they've been so recently reviewed.
I don't know, it just seems unfair to me that they're locked out for a year getting more or less because of the timing of the review. And I certainly appreciate the problem. You don't want to have managers having to review someone they just reviewed in May or June.
That's what we were thinking, right? Somebody that just got a review in May, anything really changed from May to June where they would get that additional percentage? I mean, maybe it did, but it comes down to, are we going to re-review every employee, or do we make a cutoff line of 3 months, 6 months, how far out? Or do we just say everybody that's 6 months and sooner gets a prorated amount of 2.75?
I just want to interject for a minute and frame the issues, because I think there's more. Thank you, Jay, for explaining this. So I don't think there's anybody here who would disagree that whatever we do, it should come from the personnel board if it was a personnel board item. And synchronizing all the review dates originated with Jay and was adopted by this board. So I don't have any problem that whatever we do, the notice should come from personnel board.
Correct.
And if there's some nuance that relates to the departments within the jurisdiction of Mr. Purple, He's welcome. We've sent out joint memos before. I'm happy to work with him. And if there's something that relates only to the departments outside the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, and Personnel Board owns that entirely. But I think there's a little more going on in this memo, and I just wanted to open it up because this is my interpretation. I don't know what other people are saying. So this board approved a 0 to 3% for FY21. And that notice was sent out by Mr. Purple. He volunteered, and I've included a bunch of stuff in the packet, some excerpts from minutes where we did this, and the memo from the email that went out from Mark. So you can see what we've already told people. And then on top of that, we said, let's synchronize to July 1st. So 2 different things going on. For the first time, and in the past, maybe a message was sent, I don't know, but for the first time, we expressed the annual increase as a range. In my experience, going into my 4th year, 2017, 2018, 2019, it was a point. It was a single point. We may have wished that some department heads had given less and some hadn't asked for the full amount, but it's bounced between 2, 2.25, 2.5 in my experience on the board. First time we're expressing a range. And Mark's email reiterated what we had discussed with him, which was that we wanted there to be some performance aspect to it. We asked department heads to be mindful of performance. Not everybody deserves the full raise. But I don't think that the board ever set the parameters that are suggested in Jay's memo. So in paragraph 1, he says, as you know, all departments have budgeted 3% per person for SAP employees. I don't personally know that because I don't look at their budgets, but let's assume if we said 0 to 3 that they did. And Mark looks at a lot of budgets. So if Mark agrees with that, okay. And then it says an employee would be eligible for up to 2.5% for a successful performance. An additional 0.5 would be considered for an extraordinary year. That is not anything that I personally adopted, nor did I understand that's what the board was saying. We said 0 to 3, and managers, please be mindful that performance counts. I don't know that we ever delineated it. And then going to the bottom where there's a table, staff level, I call these metrics. You can call them markers, grades, whatever. I don't think the board ever discussed this table. So I think as part of Jay is recommending this, we should be careful because this appears on personnel board stationery. And it looks like we did some things that I'm not sure we've done yet. So before we get on to some of his other recommendations, I just wanted to note that if the rest of the board was comfortable adopting this, did you all see that 2.5? Because my point would be, we are trying to do 2 things in 1 year. We're trying to add a performance or a merit component to, thank you, Vanessa. I see that, Vanessa, we have a question from the audience, and as soon as I finish my statement, we'll get to that. For the first year, we're trying to do a range and ask people to look at merit. I wouldn't say that we established a merit system. I would say the raises have a merit component. And as Dorianne famously said, let's just do it this way and see how it works out. And if we need to, let's see how managers do with this discretion. But I don't think this board ever set up these metrics. I didn't understand that we did. And I'm just wondering if we bit off too much. This is the first year we're trying to synchronize all reviews to July 1st, yet add a performance component. And now we're talking about some people not even getting a raise. I'm just wondering if we need to step back, big picture, and talk about either synchronization or phasing in a merit component. But it seems to me we've bitten off a lot to do 2 at once. So if I have the board's indulgence, maybe we'll take this question. Who's the question from? I don't know. Who's the
Paul
question?
Fabelli.
Okay. Is the board open to taking questions, or do you want to keep talking and then take questions?
I think we should continue the discussion so we have our stuff straight before we bring in a question.
Okay, I've seen it done both ways. Board of Selectmen takes public comment at the end of a meeting. I kind of like if somebody has something they want to say that's relevant, as long as it's not a speech. But let's keep talking. And Paul, we know you're there, and we'll get back to you when the board is comfortable with that. Okay.
Okay.
So I know I've thrown a lot out, but I just wanted to be mindful that we saw, I know you had Jay's packet over the weekend. The other thing is, and just one more, the last line of his memo, again, page 11, we also believe, I don't know who we is, that all reviews should be sent to the town administrator for his review before it is signed by the employee for accuracy and completion. So if you look in page 12, you have my draft town org chart. My interpretation is that, and I asked for, but never got a list of employees for whom the town administrator now signs off on reviews versus those that he doesn't. So I want to be careful. In my mind, I always distinguish that Mr. Purple's authority as town administrator to sign off on reviews kind of ends at the water's edge where the BOS ends, and that we have elected departments, officials, library, assessors, Board of Health, clerk, to name a few, and that's what the org chart is for. That shows that these departments are not all the departments in town are under the authority of the Board of Selectmen. So I think we need to be careful to distinguish that, and I did mention that to Mr. Dietz. The org chart on page 12, the original was in color. I don't know if it's as easy to follow without color. But as you can see, I think even in black and grayscale, you can see that there are departments that do not fall under the Board of Selectmen. This has never been adopted. This is my pet project and my pet peeve. I've spoken to the town administrator about adopting an org chart. I think the last time I spoke to him was January 7th, 19, when this was going to be reviewed by Ms. Hale for accuracy in terms of who appoints all these, 75 other committees that are in the box. Suffice to say, it's never been adopted. Perhaps I can push with the Board of Selectmen. I usually meet with them in the fall for a personnel meeting. Maybe we can get them to adopt an org chart. I think that would be really helpful. But what I don't want to see is this board changing a practice that is not lawful for us to change. And that is giving Mr. Purple authority to sign off on reviews that he doesn't have authority to sign off on. So I
And
know
that's
there's a
why I
lot
think-
of information.
Yeah, and that's why I think that this should be coming from the personnel board, because we have a broader jurisdiction than Mark does.
But are you saying, Jay, that we have the authority to have Mark sign off on all reviews? We
No,
can
he
give him
would
that
sign
authority?
off on the reviews that he normally signs off on. The BOS could sign off on the other ones, but if it needs to be in a file that at some point Mark has seen them, I don't know. I don't know how that part of it works.
Just to be clear, the way I view it, Mark's authority is coterminous with the Board of Selectmen's authority. I really don't know how it works between Mark and department heads, say DPW and all the rest, whatever that practice is. But then there's a whole bunch of departments who are outside the Board of Selectmen. Library, for example, and I don't know if we still have Mr. Donovan with us. I know Mr. Hegarty wanted to appear and he had a conflict. Mr. Sabelli may want to speak to this point. There are independent boards. Board of Selectmen do not look at their reviews. So I don't know who grants I don't know if you're saying that, Jay, that we should give Mark the authority to sign off on these. I don't know that we have that authority. Perhaps we do, but we would certainly need to discuss that.
I would think that Mark just keeps signing off on what he has in the past. He doesn't need any additional, just whatever he's been signing off on is normal.
So part of my concern is when I first received your request, Jay, via email, you and I talked about this distinction. I sent an email back saying that I would like the board to get a list and welcoming you to just use any existing SAP census. Just delete anything personal and just check off. These are the ones Mark sees, doesn't see, so I could check it against my org chart. When I had my Zoom call with Ms. Hale, Mr. Purple, Mr. Ballantyne to set up the agenda, Mark indicated that he sees this now, and I'll let him speak for himself. What I understood from that call was he would like to sign off on all of these reviews. Otherwise, it's not fair to the employees within his purview if he's not also looking at the ones from the elected boards. And that's where we left it. So I've talked enough.
So Madam Chair, I think my only view of this is from an equity issue for all the employees I think that I disagree somewhat with your position. Personnel board is the board that is responsible for approving all increases for employees. And if you determine, you determine what the path is for those to come before you to be approved. So I don't think that ends at appointed or elected jurisdictions. I think that you set that up for all SAP employees with the understanding that there are SAP employees in every department. And I'm just trying to, and that, like I said, I think the personnel board in that respect has more and has broader jurisdiction than I do. So my conversation with Mr. Dietz was that you should set up, personnel board should set up a process that you agree with that can be equitable for everybody, because, I can put something together that essentially, as you pointed out, basically only controls those departments that fall under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. So, and like I said, what Mr. Dietz put forward in his letter, I realize that, that it is on personnel board letterhead, and that has been acknowledged that, probably shouldn't have been. But this is, Jay's view of the world as to, in conversation with myself and Mr. Ballantyne and Ms. Hale, as to, how this, could be set up, moving forward based on how the board, personnel board previously voted to do the range rather than a specific increase.
Thank you, Mr. Purple. I appreciate it. Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, to that point, I think it's a fair point that it's going to be incumbent on us in this, particularly in the first year, to monitor how people are implementing this new system and to make sure that there is equity across the board, that we don't have managers who are giving 3% to everyone and some other people who are trying to do it in the way it was intended. So I think we have to set up some mechanism to, whether it's a chart or something going forward, to keep track of this and to make sure it's being done in an equitable way. And I think, that's sort of what Dorianne had suggested. It, we see how it play out, but we have to pay attention to the details to make sure that people across the board are being treated fairly. But I think that's our job to do, and I think that's where the onus lies.
Be clear, I wasn't suggesting that personnel board doesn't have some plenary authority under the SAP. I recognize that we do. I just wanted to recognize that it was an issue because it wasn't stated in the memo, what the board in Jay's recommendation. And I wanted to be clear, if Jay was asking us to change a process that relates to all SAP employees or just some, and I heard different things and different conversations, and then something different in this memo. So I just wanted to clarify what the issue was before the board. I'm not saying we don't have authority to do it. I just want to be clear in everyone's mind when all is said and done, that everybody understood the issue the same way. So.
Can we hear what Paul's question was? Because that might be relevant to the question.
Absolutely, sure.
I'd like to hear that now instead of way at the end, if possible.
Sure. Great. Vanessa?
Hello?
Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you,
Okay.
Vanessa.
I kind of wanted to backtrack a little bit, here's what I had mentioned to Betsy, and Betsy alluded to it at her beginning of her discussion. We're trying to do an awful lot at once here. Clearly, we're not ready for the performance portion because you guys are still deciding it. Talked to Brian Ballantyne yesterday and a little bit this morning, and what we're thinking is, what if we just postpone that this year and concentrate on what Jay's trying to do and just get everybody done on July 1. What's going to happen is we continue down the path trying to do both at once. You're going to spend half your summer or most of your summer, probably into the fall, looking at reviews and trying to develop this. Let's take it at a much slower pace. Let's just concentrate on the July 1, get everybody synchronized. Go back to your original vote. The original vote was 2.8%. And I think if we go either 2.8, there is 3% in the budgets, pick a number, 2.8, 2.93. There's probably about a $3,200 difference between that. Pick one of those numbers, give it to Jay, let him work with Brian and finish up and put to bed what the raises are going to be calculated at. And again, what that's going to happen is you can move almost all of those to a consent agenda, and you can continue to work on the performance piece in the meantime. I think that would be the best thing, and hopefully maybe get some language once you've come up with a policy or a way you want to do the performance, maybe put the language in the fall town meeting so it exists. Because I don't believe there is a performance portion anywhere in the SAP. Betsy, I don't know, you've been telling me that for a couple of years.
Oh, okay, Paul, it's section 7 is performance reviews, 7A.
Okay.
It just says an evaluation of employees' performance in a format approved by the personnel board must accompany a request for an increase. 7A.
Okay, and look, I'm just reading, hold on. So it just says a salary increase. It doesn't say performance. It doesn't say anything there. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah. So going back to last fall, I had my annual personnel chit chat with the Board of Selectmen, former Selectman Kalenda in particular, but I think my sense was the whole board wanted to see some merit component. Unfortunately, Mr. Purple had to leave the Board of Selectmen's meeting when I sat down to make my presentation. Ms. Hale was there in his stead, so she didn't speak, but I heard merit. So I took it back to my board. Mr. Purple was in attendance, as he is at most all of our meetings, some or all of our meetings. And he made clear that he didn't want to participate in a merit program that he did not have control over, the whole thing, ownership of the whole thing. Because as he echoing today, equity. And the way that our town government is currently set up, I think I've reflected it pretty well on the org chart, is a decentralized, elected boards do their thing, departments under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, let's just call them BOS departments, do their thing. So that would need to be resolved. So I agree with you, Paul. I do think that we've bitten off more than we can handle, given the pandemic too, we might have had a few extra months to discuss this. I'm concerned also that a third item, in conjunction with adopting a new performance evaluation tool that was designed by Mr. Purple at our request and discussed ad nauseum. We had many fruitful conversations about it. They were not nauseating, but they went on for some time. We came up with a plan whereby personnel board no longer sees the full review.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one of the things, and Dorianne pointed this out to me, she sent me an email before the meeting that said, hey, whatever happened, we were supposed to see for this year, we were supposed to see the previous year's review. And she's concerned that and it's actually in the minutes that are in your packet. We were supposed to see for this first year when we adopted the new form. Let me get you a page. Dorianne, do you have that page reference?
Yep, hang on, page 15, lines, starts 120 to 124. But line
And I'll let
124.
Dorianne speak to this because if we're going to start getting into the business of taking responsibility for performance and performance reviews, we probably ought to be seeing the year before. Especially if we're going to be splicing and dicing years, we may be looking a little bit at, anyway, I'll let you follow along that discussion.
And we just make it easy and just say, set the increase at 2.5 for everybody prorated regardless. This way, nobody has to do re-reviews. Everybody's is the same. Nobody gets more, nobody gets less. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. There's a tentative budget. With the uncertainty of the state budget and everything else, everybody just gets the same number and we don't have to worry about it.
Jay, there's not that many reviews that have been done right now. And if we're gonna bring this to a July 1st. There's a handful of reviews that have been done. Personally, I think every review should be redone and everybody should be set at the same time for July 1st. If we had 15, I think only 15 have come to us. The managers can redo those. It won't take them that much. It hasn't been that much time and you'd have had a pandemic. But it's not going to kill anybody to redo the few or the handful that we've received and get everybody on the same page. If we want a July 1st, let's not do this half-assed. Let's do this correctly, redo the ones we need to redo and get everybody on board. And I don't think that anybody should be penalized to a 2.5 because they've had an earlier review. That is not acceptable to me. If we're doing a 0 to 3, everybody should be on the same timeline, the same start date, the same end date. And if somebody has to do a little bit of extra work, then so be it. But that's what we've agreed to do. I don't think we should be jury rigging this and having some people.
Just a point,
penalized.
okay. Thank you, Dorianne, and I'll let you continue in a minute. Point of information for Ms. Hale, if she's available, and Mr. Purple, and again, Mr. Dietz, if you discuss this. I asked for an updated SAP roster. I know everybody's busy year end. I didn't get one. My recollection is we bounce between 60 and 65 SAP employees. Is that still correct?
About that.
Okay. Have we had any furloughs
No.
or layoffs now?
No.
Okay, because that number does not include rec seasonal workers, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we had, by my count, 16 evaluations in our Zoom meeting on May 20th. So that's about a fourth of the roster right there. I don't know if you recall. I do because I do the agenda and I had to fit them all in little font. So we had about 16. I don't think we had, did we have some last month, Vanessa? If you recall, sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. Let me look this up. So, and I don't know what time frame Dorian's talking about. I think Jay wanted to freeze Feb, so I'll look from February. February 12th, we had 2 reviews.
We're gonna re-review everybody. Then even if they got one 2 weeks ago, we should re-review it. We got to make it this, we got to make it the same for everybody.
I'm just looking to let you know, February, we did 2 reviews. March was 1, which we subsequently revoted in May because there was a procedural issue. April, we didn't meet. May, we had 16. Just point of information. June 3rd, we had none. That was a pre-SAP meeting with no reviews. So I thank Mr. Stabelli for his comments. I would like to see, strongly like to see the board either move towards synchronization and postpone merit, or give the departments guidance on merit and postpone synchronization. I don't see the 2 things happening at once. The system where we prorate, and again, I want to apologize, when this first came up, I didn't really understand how it would all work. I knew Jay had a table and you prorate numbers, but in my mind, I never wrote a memo to employees saying, this is how your reviews are going to work. And for me personally, I am not going to ever approve an action again unless I understand how to communicate it. Because that's what I see my job as chair. Right now, I have no idea how we would communicate to employees and managers that we want them to put in a performance component and we're syncing everybody to today. I just don't know how to write that memo. So I agree with Paul. We've bitten off a lot. Perhaps Brian has something to say, but I'd like to see the board settle on one thing or another. And Mr. Dietz has a suggestion on the table that we cut back from the 2.8 and that it be 2.5 in light of the pandemic. So that's something for the board to consider.
If somebody can get a 3, then everybody has to be able to get a 3. If we can't just go back and say everybody gets a 2.5. If somebody's getting a full review, if their anniversary date was, if they're going to be re-reviewed at 11 months. So if we're going to make everybody 3s, we should be re-reviewing everybody then.
Could I just make a suggestion? I just realized we have Miss Berry. She's, I think, probably alone in the clerk's office today. She came up on new business. Do I have approval of the board to to suspend this conversation, take up Miss Berry has a request for a salary for an assistant, and then we can come back to this discussion? Would that work for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. And Vanessa, you also have a request. I think this is the substance, the heart and soul of the board's agenda today is these employee evaluation issue. So I'd like to just go to new business. We can suspend some of that. But Vanessa, you had a request for vacation leave for the new town accountant. We're going to 6A, and let's take care of that, and Amy, and then actually, let's take Amy first. 6B, clerk's office, request for a salary. Amy, I'm sorry we kept you waiting. I didn't see your face and hello.
Hi, thank you, Betsy. Jim wanted me to extend his apologies for not being here today. He has a military promotion for somebody in his family, so he's there today. But on Monday, Jim plans to hire Renee Chen as the new administrative assistant here in the Taunton Clerk's office. This position has been vacant since February, and it was a 23-hour-a-week position, but we chose not to fill that during the pandemic. So prior, the administrative assistant was hired at the midpoint of the SAP Grade 3 Schedule A with 23 hours a week, which was $24.60 an hour. And just prior to the recent town meeting, the Board of Selectmen requested all departments to reduce budgets by 2% and to try and minimize the tax increase for residents. So Jim is taking a big chance and reducing this position from 23 hours a week to 19.5 hours a week, which would change the position on the SAP Schedule A to a Schedule C. And it also saves with cost because there's not benefits offered with this position. Jim is asking that, or he wanted me to say that with only time will tell if he's shooting himself in the foot with this, because in 2015, it was a 37-hour-a-week position, then he reduced it to 23, and now he's reducing it to 19.5. So he is requesting that the Personnel Board approve a hiring rate for Renee Chen of $24.60 an hour, which is the midpoint range for Schedule A, but it's also within the range for the Schedule C, which is $18.38 to $25.53. Ms. Chen does have the experience, or her experience exceeds the minimum job requirements for this position, which is a high school degree and 2 years related experience. The associate's degree is preferred, but she does have a BS in business administration from Boston University. And while in college, she was an administrative assistant for 4 years. She graduated and worked as a consultant for Y2K implementation projects and as a senior webmaster for a large mutual fund. She had done payroll and benefits for a large retail chain. And so we're just asking that you approve us to hire Ms. Chen at $24.60 per hour.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. And for the board members, this is a page, the memo from Mr. Hegarty is at page 22 of the packet. Do we have any questions for Ms. Berry? Okay, I see that there's a second question. I don't know if that relates to this. I just see a little icon that says chat 2. Is there anybody else?
Mr. Sabelli raised his hand again.
Okay. Is there a way to ask him if that has to do with this salary?
Betsy, no, it was back to the original conversation. When we get back to the original conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Sabelli. Okay, does any board member have any questions for Ms. Berry?
No, but I'd recommend that we go ahead with the request.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the clerk's request dated June 24th, 2020 to set a starting salary for Ms. Renee Chen at an hourly rate of $24.60 per hour. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I'll take you in the order. I see you on the screen, and please state your name and your vote. Ms. Jasinski,
Dorian Jasinski, yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Barry Rubenstein, yes.
Jay Dietz,
Jay Dietz, yes.
Mr. Nixon,
Dave Nixon, yes.
Betsy Rosenblum, yes, it is unanimous.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Following this meeting, I will send a follow-up email and include payroll on this as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Amy. All right, just 1 minute, make a note, so I actually do what I say I'm gonna do. Okay, and then Ms. Hale, do you want to just hop in?
Sure.
Page 21 of your packet is a request to the Personnel Board from Vanessa Hale. This is under section 11 B of the SAP. This is employees with past municipal experience can jump ahead if they have the requisite experience. And we've had this discussion before. If you look at the table, it's the same table as the FY20 SAP. If you're looking at it, it wasn't changed in 21. So you can look at either the old SAP or the new one. 0 to 5 years of employment, 6 to 10. So I believe what we came up with is on the day after you've made 5, I was told this came up some months ago, maybe a year ago. We had 2 requests for vacation accrual to jump the schedule from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And you guys, my administrators can correct me if I'm wrong. The practice was, so we have in the table, and this is something I would like to address. I've got it later in the agenda. I don't know if we'll get to it. You have a gap. After an employee achieves 5 years, they're eligible for 2 weeks. According to the table, if it's 6 years, they're eligible for 3 weeks. And again, it's done by hour. But is that correct, Vanessa? 0 to 5, 6.666 hours per month equates to 2 weeks vacation?
Weeks, yep.
Okay. And if you're 6 to 10 years, 10 hours per month ends up at 3 weeks. But what do you do with the what they call the interstices between, you've worked for the town for 5 years and a day and not quite 6. And I was told the practice was 0 to 5 is 2 weeks. A day over 5 years is 3 weeks. So that's the practice. I hope the board can look at this and clarify it later in the year. So Vanessa, I don't see in your memo. Oh, I do see. Ms. McAuliffe has held this job since 1999. So we don't have that 5 or 6 year issue. She is beyond. Okay.
Yes, for this particular employee, she has many years of experience in the public sector in both the town side and the school side. She's been with the Wayland School District since 2013 prior to coming to us today.
Okay. So she would be eligible for more vacation, except that the SAP caps her.
Caps at 3 weeks,
Probably.
yes.
Okay. Board members, I open it to you. Any questions for Ms. Hale? Comments?
The only comment I would make is the SAP says experience in a similar position. And I think the memo that we receive should lay out what the similar position was. It doesn't just say work for a municipality or government agency. It says in a similar position.
Okay, it's certainly going forward, Barry, I'm happy to be more specific with this particular employee. She's been in a senior municipal finance role in the school department on that end, but thank you. I'll be more specific.
So Vanessa, with respect to being a town accountant, what is her experience?
She actually
Can you
has
provide
served-
that detail verbally now?
Sure. She has served as a town accountant here in Southborough in the past, and then she moved on to the school district for a number of years, both in the Northborough Southborough School District, in the school finance end of the superintendent's central office, and then she moved on to the Wayland School District as a school business manager before coming back to Southborough as of today.
I don't have enough familiarity with those positions to know if they are a similar position in another municipality.
They
Um,
would be. Mark can certainly weigh in if he wants. I would view it as, a high-level finance officer on the school side.
Mr.
Mark,
Purple,
do
would
you
you,
have anything else?
she
Yeah,
was your
no.
hire. Would you like to add something?
No, I think, like I said, I don't see that the experience, is questionable in terms of the additional week of vacation. I think that, her experience as the town accountant here, obviously prior to my arrival, and her experience, especially in Wayland, in an elevated finance position with the school, is more than valid for the requested third week of vacation.
Board members? Comments? Dave, do you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, we need a motion on this, or?
Yeah, so Vanessa has received feedback from the board. I would share in that, that we specify exactly what the job titles are, and if they're not the same job title, please flesh that out moving forward. Thanks. Yes, we should have a motion to approve 3 weeks vacation under section 11B for new town accountant Carla McAuliffe. Do we have a motion on that?
Oh, so moved?
All right,
Second.
do we have a second?
Second,
All right, we will vote on this. Roll call vote, please. I'll take you as I see you on the screen. Mr. Nixon,
Dave Nixon, yes.
Mr. Dietz,
Jay Dietz, yes.
Ms. Jazinski,
Dorianne Jasinski, yes.
Mr. Rubenstein,
Barry Rubenstein, yes.
Ms. Rosenblum votes in the affirmative. Thank you all. And we look forward to working with and meeting the new accountant when we come out of the bunker.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Vanessa. On 6C, I was going to have the board look ahead to possible SAP revisions for FY22. This included Mr. Dietz's request to revisit the definition of anniversary date. Number 2, a policy on personnel evaluations. Are they necessary for part-time hourly graded positions and seasonal positions? That was something we said we would look at and never got back to. And 3, looking at this particular provision where we give a benefit to hires with municipal experience and don't look at private sector experience. But in light of our ongoing discussion with 5A, I think we should table this. If we have some time before 2 o'clock, we can get back to it, but I'm going to table 6C for the time being. All right, and we'll go back to 5B, ongoing discussion of synchronizing review dates and adopting metrics and town administrator review. We're back on 5B, 1 and 2. Thank you all. All right, Mr. Sabelli, you had a comment? Is Mr. Sabelli still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm technology kind of challenged here.
Okay.
I got a couple of quick questions. Getting back to that I'm kind of a little confused on. When we were talking, the original raise was voted by 2.8. Then Dorianne, if I remember correctly, made a motion. She wanted to do it 2.5 to 3, and we would, and the other half would be performance. When did we go from a 0 to a 3? Did I miss something? Last I knew, we were between a 2.5. You had voted 2.5, and you could get an extra half for this performance. And now the discussion today was 0 to 3. Did I miss something? Because I'm pretty sure most of the department heads are thinking this was 2.5 with an extra half potential.
Paul, point of information, the board approved this. The vote is in the minutes. Hang on, let me get you that reference. I really need somebody to do an index of all these minutes so I know exactly where we voted for what. Okay.
No, Betsy, if you changed it, that's fine. I'm just wondering,
No,
did I
we
miss
didn't
something? That's
change
all.
it. So
It
Paul,
was the
just to be,
January 15th.
let me be clear. We look at the annual adjustment every year anew.
Yep.
Okay? And we vote, and the vote appears in the minutes. And since I became chair, I do the minutes, and I try to make them as inclusive as possible. So I'll direct you to page 17 of the packet,
Okay,
line 241. Okay, we first voted to approve a 2.8 annual adjustment for salaries.
okay.
All right. And then, Ms. Hale, you have a reference to the minutes?
The
We revisited
January-
this.
Yeah, the January 15th, 2020 minutes that were in the packet. Page 3 of 4 discusses the annual salary.
What page in the packet are you referring to?
I'm sorry, I have my manual copy that I put together originally, so I don't have page numbers.
We have January 15th minutes in the packet. I don't believe I put
Yes.
them in the packet. Hang on.
I don't have that.
November 13th, I asked you to put in the packet, and a
Right.
page from 12/11, not January 1st. Oh, sorry, it was the January 15th packet. Okay, page 19 of your packet is an excerpt from the board minutes. I just misunderstood. Thank you, Vanessa. These were board minutes. We subsequently took another look at the adjustment. We said 2.8, then we took a look at the adjustment again. This was in the board packet for January 15th. I don't know how it ended up. Oh, yeah, because it was board minutes of a discussion on 12/11. So this is at page 19 of your packet, line 142 to 44. So we had a discussion. We went back through what we had done before. And the reason that I put it back on the agenda, I remember this, in connection with setting the annual adjustment, we had looked at the raises for union employees. And we had focused on a 2.8. There had been some confusion about that because Mr. Purple was in the room and Mr. Ballantyne was in the room during the original discussion, but then they had to leave to go to other meetings. And I felt like the board didn't have all the information, and we had focused on the fact that the unions get 2.8, but they also get a 2% COLA. So the effective rate for some of the CBA employees was 4.8. So we went back, reconsidered everything, and voted and said if we, looking at 141. Motion to approve an annual adjustment of 0 to 3% depending on performance, unanimously approved. Okay,
Okay,
So-
I just didn't see that. Okay.
yeah,
No,
so
if I
so Paul, to speak to your point, if department heads think it's 2.5 to 3 is the new issue, all adjustments of past years are erased when we come into a new year. The board looks at it anew. So any confusion would be because we looked at it twice. We said 2.8, and then we said 0 to 3. We raised it to 3% for the maximum raise in light of looking at the CBAs again. And Mark had always cautioned us to do it as a range because we kept getting the result that I think in my 3 years on the board, I've seen one review that was when we did it as one number, 2, 2.25, 2.5. I've seen one review. It came from an elected board in which they asked for less than the full amount. And that indicates a problem because you have stellar employees, you have good employees, and history and experience and statistics would tell you that we may have 1 or 2 who are underperforming, at least in some areas. Yet every time we see if the adjustment is 2.5, we see everyone get 2.5. So this year we said it's a range. We could have said the range is 1 to 3. We don't really think anyone's going to get a 0 raise, but in the private sector where I'm from, there are employees who get 0% raises. They don't meet their benchmarks. If someone is on a PIP and they don't meet it, I mean,
A
maybe
PIP
they
should
should
get
even
a
be
0.
shown the door. But they could, 0 raises are a thing in the world that I come from. I don't know about municipal government. So when we said we want to do a range, we said 0 to 3.
Okay, I just didn't see that. That's my fault. I
Well,
was
yeah,
still on
'cause-
assumption 2.5.
And this
It
was
included
in Mark's,
in Mark's email to managers in December. He
Yes.
just laid out that it was 0 to 3.
and that is page 20 in your packet, Mark's email. So Mark, after we voted the 0 to 3, Mark felt he wanted to be the one to send out the message. The board was fine with that. And I do see in his email, he says to make the process of determining increases based on performance less subjective, I will be working with board member Jay Dietz to add a numbering system to the new evaluation form, which will assign a rate increase based upon score. So that's a problem for me because I don't think we did that. I think Jay does it in his June 22nd memo in the packet. We added a numbering system to the form, but I don't think we tied that to the increase. Am I crazy?
You are not crazy.
No.
Okay. We went back and forth about an evaluation form, got to a place where we're going to see just a cover page, but I don't think we ever assigned a rate increase based upon a score. Does
No,
anybody have
you-
the evaluation in front of them, the form?
Yeah, no, you did not, Betsy. I think everything you've said is absolutely correct. I think Jay's memo simply was trying to move forward based on the votes that have been taken, or suggest a path to move forward based on the votes that were taken.
Okay.
Yep.
So Mark said something would be done. We didn't really follow up on it. And you know, that there's plenty of, I won't say blame, plenty of responsibility to go around. So I want to make sure the record's clear because that's the only thing we have when we go back to this next year to say, what did we decide? And the bottom line is Brian was absolutely right. A month ago, we need to give guidance to the department heads. So comments, suggestions about moving forward. I tend to talk way too much in these meetings.
Betsy, the reason we did a 0 to 3% was to see how the managers were managing the people they were overseeing. Because what we've seen in the past is when you give 2.5%, everybody gets it. We've only seen one that didn't, that I remember. But whatever you give them, they just give it to everybody. That's not the intention of getting a raise. So what we did, and this is my memory, we did a 0 to 3 really to see how the managers are managing their people. If they're meeting their benchmarks, okay, are they going above and beyond? It's not meant as a merit or I guess there is a performance. If you do really well, you go above and beyond and you're exemplary, then your manager will give you the 3%. So, I mean, we had a very heated discussion about this, but the purpose behind the 0 to 3 was to see what our managers were doing in managing their people. And then we were going to revisit this later because we may need some more training for our managers to be evaluating their employees. Maybe they don't know how to do it correctly, but to just blindly give everybody the same raise, it was a pretty heated discussion last year about it. That is the purpose of the range. If the board's not comfortable with doing the range with setting a July 1st, then I would be in agreement with Jay and just set a percent again, but we're not seeing our managers delineating from that percentage. We want them to evaluate their employees and have the freedom to be able to do that. And that was the purpose. So I'm not really sure how to manage that. I haven't been done HR in a very long time. So I don't know how to do that. I would have to, go back to Mark with that, but that was our purpose of the 0 to 3, for our managers to have the freedom to evaluate their employees, and those who just were stellar and went above and beyond, to give them a little bit extra for the year. So I don't know what to do with this. So I'm totally open to anything that anybody has to say about how to correct this, but we definitely dropped the ball on it because we didn't give them any kind of guidelines. Jay came up with guidelines, but we as a board didn't discuss it. We're supposed to have last year's reviews. When we looked at those 18 reviews that we had from February to May, we did not get them. We never saw last year's reviews. That was part of this process. So we're missing some pieces. We're missing some communication thing. I think we need to take a step back, maybe just try to handle the July 1st date, set a raise, and then try to do something different for next year. I mean, I really don't know.
As I recall, when we were having that discussion, we wanted to have in the rating system a provision for putting in there something similar to does not meet expectations or less than satisfactory or needs improvement. And that
Yeah.
was the reason for having that entire scale from top to bottom.
Which we definitely did add on the new reports.
Mhm.
But right, I mean, if you're on a performance plan, there's probably, you shouldn't be getting a increase. It should be 0.
But they're not doing that. When we give them, okay, the raise is gonna be 2.5, they just
Right.
give everybody 2.5. So we
Right.
wanted the managers to manage differently, to do better.
Correct.
That's why we did this range. So
Yep.
I think it's a question of training. It's a question of communication. We actually probably dropped the ball and didn't handle this correctly. We just assumed that they would know what to do with it. So I would suggest we maybe take a step back in agreement with Betsy and Jay, take a step back from that, from the sliding scale of a raise, and just handle this July 1st, getting everybody in sync, redoing the reviews, getting them all in sync, and then setting a raise, and then going to try to help the managers do a better job on their evaluations of their employees.
Yep.
Again, guys, I'm
I have a-
sorry. I
I have a
just,
question.
I know what
Not
makes
to-
sense to me.
No, Dorian, you're absolutely correct. If board members, if you look at page 19, where we discussed the adjustment, the last comment before we voted was Barry's, and it summed up what we said, page 142, on page 19, line 142. If everyone continues to get a 3% raise, we know we have a problem. So that's what
Right.
Dorian is saying.
Right.
Which is
My question is
absolutely-
this. I apologize, I never really understood, Jay. I remember you saying it was easy, how it would be phased in. Let's say for the sake of argument, we had voted a 2.8, 3, whatever, a set number.
Mhm.
Would we have, and we hadn't had a pandemic, because we continued to give reviews in the pandemic.
Yep.
What would have happened on July 1st? Would you have been asked, as part of this synchronization, take out the performance piece? Would you have been asking us to not give reviews for people from who had reviews from February to June of 2020? You don't say 2020 in your memo. I assume you meant people who have been reviewed in the last 6 months don't need a new review. Is that part of the phase-in as you saw it?
So that's the way I was originally thinking of it, but if we're gonna be changing the amounts, then everybody should be re-reviewed, so everybody has equal opportunity to get the correct raise.
Well, no, but everybody who was reviewed up to June
But they-
30th got the same review as everybody. So it's a little confusing to begin with before we phase in. We do reviews and we call them the FY whatever review, 1920. They're being reviewed for 12 months on a calendar, and we just characterize it as 20, 21, 22, depending on when the review falls. So everybody we reviewed up to June 30th, yesterday, or including the ones we did in May, because we didn't do any in June. We reviewed people in May, and they got their FY20 raise, which was set at, I don't know, was it 2.5? None of these people would be eligible for a redo until next year. And I've been told that it all works out fairly. All the people whose reviews start today and beyond get the FY21 number because their review falls in FY21.
What about the people that got reviewed, let's say in October? They're
That was
past,
it, FY20. So they got 2.5.
Mhm.
they're past the 6 months, so do they get the new review of the 3? They can go up to 3%? I mean, it's.
I don't know. I
it
never,
could be-
this is
right.
my problem. I'm responsible for what comes out of the board, but I never understood.
It
I
could be, right, it could actually be very, very simple. Let's just say we picked a number arbitrarily, say we picked 2.5, right? Every single person, regardless of when your anniversary date, gets 2.5% prorated from whatever your date was to July 1. Going forward, everybody is now on the new scale where they can get from 0 to 3%. So
Right.
if you started in May, you get a prorated of 2 months of 2.5%. If you started in, let's say, August, you get August, you basically get, you're going to get 11/12 of your bonus at 2.5%. So that was my question, is how far back does everybody just automatically get 2.5%? That's just it. and now the new rates go 0 to 3? Or do we say, listen, you were just recently reviewed over the last 3 months. Somebody that was reviewed 11 months ago, they should have the opportunity to get 0 to 3, but this person didn't because they were reviewed 2 months ago, which now is not fair. Everybody can just get 2.5. We prorate it to July 1. Going forward from today on, it's 0 to 3. I mean, it could be almost as easy as that.
I'm sorry, I really don't understand that, so I wouldn't know how to write that memo.
Yeah,
I-
I'm confused on what you mean by going forward is 0 to 3. What period are you talking about?
July 1 today and on.
Like everybody.
Right.
But, so everybody's going to be reviewed July 1?
Nope.
No?
Nope. So basically, everybody that from this point until July 1 of 2019, whenever their anniversary date was, the last time they were reviewed, they get a prorated portion of 2.5% of that date up until July 1.
July 1 of what year? I'm
This
confused.
year, right now, today.
2020.
Thank you. Right.
We've
exactly.
already given,
But they've
Jay, we've already
gotten
given
them.
people raises
Yeah,
during calendar year 2019
Right, but
and
you have to
calendar
now
year
prorate 'em.
2020. We've already given these people raises. It's gone into their paycheck. And
Right.
Vanessa, correct me, I always forget. Was it 2.25 for FY 20 or 2.5?
It was
Yeah.
2.5.
2.5. Thank you.
Right, but because we're going to July 1, they're now going to miss out on part of their raise. So you have to give them, every single person, a prorated amount from with their last review date to July 1. Then every single person, SAP wise, will now have the same review date of July 1, and they'll all be going starting on July 1. So even if you were reviewed back in March, now you get a prorated portion from March to July. You shouldn't have to miss out on that part of your bonus.
yeah.
Jay, you don't have to do a prorated amount. They've already been receiving their raise. They've been receiving their raise. The
They would re-
simplest way to do it is to re-review everybody and make the new raise effective July 1st. So if they got a raise 3 weeks ago, because that's part of 20, and this is the new year, they're going to get another raise on top of it because you're going forward. The only way you're going to sync everybody in is to do them all at the same time, not prorating anybody. They've already gotten their raises. The last people to have gotten their raises, they just got them. They're going to get another raise now. It's going to be another increase, but now they're caught up with everyone who had done it earlier in the year.
But how
So
far
we just
back?
have to redo all the raises and make a new raise effective July 1st today and go forward with it. Now everyone is in sync for the whole next year. You don't have to prorate or do anything because everybody's already gotten their raises. All those reviews are done. What you're trying to do is bring everybody in sync to a July 1st start date for pay raises and go to the next July or June 30th. So the only way to do it all at the same time. You don't have to prorate anybody. That doesn't make any sense.
Can we take it back? Okay, so this would presuppose that we're not going to do a range this year. We're going to stick with a set point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that our group can't even sort of get our arms around what it is we're doing at this late date. I think we really need to spend more time on that. I'd be in favor of just moving forward with the synchronizing evaluations and then give ourselves the time to work out the other piece of it.
So Barry, if I understand, would you be, you're in favor, so we have two aspects. One is synchronizing to July 1st, which I really don't think is going to happen by today. It'll be, but whatever we do, if we work it out in August or September, it'll be synchronized to July 1st. But are we talking about setting a point? Or are you talking about 0 to 3?
No, I think setting a point, just the other pieces, too much for us to get our arms around at this point.
Okay, is it the sense of the board to approve a set point in lieu of the range, to revote the
Hello?
FY 21 increase? Is that what I'm hearing?
Betsy, I think Brian Ballantyne wanted to weigh in a little bit.
Oh, I would welcome that. Good afternoon, Brian. You have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
You can't see me, but you can hear me. So here's what I would do, and you're close to doing what I think you should do, at least for this year. You probably should do a point system like you're probably leaning towards. The point, whatever that is, I don't have an opinion on that. You can decide. So how it would work is you would get, and this is what we call the budget neutral option. It's not as fancy as it sounds. It's actually pretty easy. So if you gave 2% to someone and their anniversary is December 31st or halfway through the year, they're going to get their raise early. They're going to get it July 1st, but they're going to get it prorated for the year. So if they're going to make $50,000 next year, they're still going to make $50,000. They're just getting their raise a little early. So there's no cost to the town, because remember, we didn't want that. And it sets it up so now every July, you're fine. You can do it. So you just, and also the additional thing is, anyone on July 1st, it doesn't matter because they're July 1st. So they're normal. So you're cutting out probably 20% of the people already, just doing it that way. So the other 80%, you have to figure out the prorate, but I have a spreadsheet for that. I have to update it with Kristen, but it's close to being done. So that is what you want to do, because that doesn't cost the town anything. It's just if you're in May next year, May of 21, you'll actually get a raise July of 20, but it's going to be a lesser amount based on 3%, 2%, 1%. But for the year, for the fiscal year, you're making the same amount of money. So the employee is fine, the town is fine, everyone's fine. And it sets you up again for next July to be, once that's done, the next July, it's fine. It just rolls on. So it's really not a difficult process, but it's the right way to do it. So that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's the way to go.
I do
That
too.
works. Yep, that works for me.
Would it be possible, Brian, for our meeting in August, for you to have a spreadsheet with the SAP employees, what their anniversary date is, the date, and again, we're gonna have to have that discussion. I'll use the common definition that anniversary date is the date you started working as opposed to the date of hire. I know we need to have that discussion. So it would have the anniversary. I don't know if do you guys, for anniversary date, do you do date of hire or start date?
Start date.
Start
Date of
date.
hire could be 2 months before that.
Gotcha. So this board, I would like to see as chair of the board, the SAP roster with the anniversary dates, the date the person is eligible for their review, which should be the same as the anniversary date or the day before, the day after. And then how this works. I have not seen a visual representation of this for some time. And that's confusing for me because I'm a visual learner. And your plan, Brian, would presuppose that we delay implementation of a merit or performance-based range so that
Correct.
everybody
Yeah.
gets the same number, correct?
Correct. It probably is the easiest way to do it. I think the merit piece, as a bunch of you have now said, is probably a bigger discussion. So, Kristen is working on the SAP census. It's just been year end, so it's a little
Understood.
crazy, but I think she's close to being done. So yes, you can get that in August.
Okay, super. Thank you,
That's
Brian,
good.
for your input.
Sure.
All right. Is it the sense of the board to readjust the adjustment and give it a set point and continue the discussion of the merit portion for later? Okay. Do we have a number? Do we have a motion to set the annual adjustment for FY21 SAP raises? Do I hear a number?
Try 2.5, 2 point, I don't know.
Well,
2.5.
our original vote was 2.8 before there was a pandemic. And then I imagine if the representation in the memo from Jay is correct, and Mark, you could speak to this, most departments budgeted 3%.
Yes, so
Okay.
I mean, if you have a range of 0 to 3, we need to ensure that if people were gonna get 3, it was in the budgets.
Gotcha.
And if
So,
this
yeah,
is-
so the
If
budget,
this is done correctly, there's probably only 2% of the people that should really be getting 3%. Like
Okay.
Joanne said, this is meant to be way above and beyond. It's
But we're
not,
not, Jay, we're delaying, we're having a discussion on a motion to set the adjustment at a certain, oh, sorry. Go ahead. I
That's why I
shouldn't have
do
interrupted.
it at 3%, right?
Okay. So my question is, and while we've got Brian and Mark here, our finance guys, I don't want this board to spend, I don't even know if we can sit in the chat room beyond 2 o'clock. Vanessa, that's a threshold question.
We can stay till midnight.
There's no one right after us.
Thank you, Vanessa. I hope
Okay.
not to. So what is the cost to the town? Because I sense that this board is going to end up between 2.5% and 3%. Given all these uncertainties that Jay so nicely outlined in the pandemic, what is the consequence of the board doing a 2.5 versus a 2.8 versus sticking with a 3% for this year?
Each
I'd love to-
percent, Betsy, I just remember by the rule of thumb, rounded is
Yeah.
about $20,000 in total. So each 0.5%, obviously, about $10,000.
We
So
did-
the difference Brian, if I understand you, the difference between, sorry to interrupt, Dorian, I'll get right back to you. The
That's okay.
difference between 2.5 and 3 is $10,000.
Correct.
Okay, if you look in our budget, back at page 4, we have $10,000 unexpended in our budget because we never hired the consultant. We didn't give away all the tuition money. Am I reading our budget correctly, Brian? Page 4 of the board packet, do you have access to that, or somebody who's good at spreadsheets, Mark?
Yes, you're talking for this year. I mean, FY '20, Betsy?
Yeah,
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah. Yes.
this board is returning almost $11,000 to the general treasury. And we're a pretty small budget. Are other departments returning money?
yes.
Yeah.
But to what extent, we won't know
To an extent.
probably until later this month.
Okay, so no way to know where we end up between state aid and pandemic and at some point, if we don't open up, are we gonna be furloughing some employees? I hear the F word everywhere.
I think now that we're beginning to, we're beginning to move forward, I think a little bit in our reopening to the public. We're going to start doing opening back up to the public in a couple of weeks by appointment. The governor's executive order is recommending that we track people who do come into the building in case somebody tests positive, and then we can more easily do contact tracing. So we're moving in that direction. I think the likelihood that we're furloughing people becomes less and less unless there are some departments that, are going to have a tougher time opening up based on their operations. And, I would say senior center, but senior center is more of their population, not the employees themselves. So I think it's still on the table, but I think the further we get away from March, the less it's on the table, Betsy.
Okay. So really, I don't know that the board, every year that I've been on it, has tried to increase its understanding of the bigger picture. What managers make through their contracts, what the unions are making, and you've provided those. So my time on the board, we've tried to broaden our focus and make the SAP increase, take cognizance of what the other employees are getting paid, what financial situation the town is in. And that's kind of muddled in my head. Whatever I thought I knew back in October and November, December, when we did this, obviously has radically changed. So, but I just feel like to the extent employees, I know my grocery bills are going up. The cost of groceries goes up, even though we're in a pandemic, everybody's still eating. So I'm not sure why the cut back to 2.5%. I would think we would be
I just
looking
threw
more at
that
the
out.
2.8.
I just threw that out. I mean, but
Okay,
we based on the minutes from December 11th, if you go to line 120, it says the board was influenced by union raises of 2.8. Why don't we stick to the 2.8?
What page are you on, please?
Page 19.
Of the
Minutes
packet?
from December 11th, line 120.
Yeah, keep
Why don't
reading
we
now.
why don't we go with the 2.8? I would not want to go to 3.0 because we didn't want everybody to get a 3.0. We wanted it to be based on exemplary performance. So why don't we go back to our 2.8 and just do the 2.8%?
Just point of information, Dorian, if you continue on 121 and 122, this is on page 19.
Yep.
The reason I asked us, this was a recap of the previous discussion. I
Right.
said reconsideration. The board was influenced by union raises of 2.8. After the meeting, the chair realized that the board had not discussed that union raises are effectively 4.8% because members get two raises, a 2.8 step raise and a 2.0 COLA. That information was available but not highlighted at the time of our vote. So, and I've heard from Mr. Purple before that nothing in the pandemic is causing the town to reopen union contracts. I assume that still holds. So union employees are getting, many of them, if they qualify, remember Brian walked me through this. There were some folks that if they maxed out weren't, but the typical union employee will be getting 4.8, a 2.8 step raise and a 2% COLA. And please, gentlemen, finance team, correct me if I'm wrong. So it's not really fair to say 3.0 versus 2.8. It's really, we're looking at 4.8 for most of the union employees. That's all.
The only thing I'd add to that, Betsy, if I can,
Sure, please, Brian.
yeah, and this may or may not matter to you, but next year, FY '22, I mean, I'm anticipating the board, your board, is gonna have a very difficult year. Let's put it this way, I don't think you're gonna be talking about 3.0 next year. I think that's gonna be a lot lower. So I don't know if that plays into your decision today, but I would say, you know, a 1 or a 0 next year might be the reality. So that's, I just wanted to add that.
So we're gonna, yeah, and those of us who have been in town and in town government for a decade or more, remember those years. So thank you, Brian. I remember back when I was a library trustee over a decade ago, we had very lean years as well. Maybe some years with no raise at all, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, so it's the sense of the board to approve a raise. Dorian has a suggestion of 2.5 on the table. Anybody else?
I changed that to 2.8.
2.8,
2.8.
2.8.
2.8.
Okay, so is there a motion to reconsider the, oh, we are reconsidering by board acclamation. So is there a motion to approve an annual adjustment for FY '21 SAP salary increases at 2.8?
So moved.
All right. Second? I don't hear a second. Second, okay. This will be a roll call vote. Please identify yourself with your vote and I'll go, oh, I don't have board members in front of me now. All right. So we'll just go in alphabetical order. Mr. Dietz.
Jay Dietz, yes.
I don't know what alphabetical order is. Ms. Jazinski.
Brianne Jasinski, yes.
Mr. Nixon.
Dave Nixon, yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Barry Rubenstein, yes.
Oh, sorry, Rubenstein. I've only been getting that wrong for 2 years. Rubenstein, yes. And Ms. Rosenblum votes in the affirmative. Okay. Along with an earlier discussion, I think this should come from the Personnel Board.
Yep.
So a sense of the board that I can send out this email, and Ms. Hale, I will connect with you to get the distribution list. Or maybe you can send me your email, Vanessa, and then I can just piggyback on that.
Sure.
Do you have an email for board chairs also with SAP employees?
No, I'll check with Tom. Tom's been on vacation, but he's back tomorrow morning, so let me connect with him about that.
All right. I don't think the board needs to take responsibility for a distribution list. I'll do that with Vanessa. Okay. And the email, would the board members like to see the email before it goes? Because I'm going to say we've reappraised in light of circumstances. We had approved a range and we had approved synchronization, and it became too complicated against the background of the pandemic to do it all at once. So it's a 2.8. Now, second piece,
Right.
what does it say about the synchronization? The email, the message.
I would suggest that you, if you would defer probably to Brian Ballantyne on helping you to at least provide you the structure of how that piece would go. I
Okay.
think that Brian can probably explain that, do what he did today, but
Right.
do it in a fairly good written form.
All right, so the email could come from me and Brian.
Yep.
How's that sound?
Sounds
That
good.
works.
All right, and on our next agenda, I will put continuing discussion of how to implement the merit component, and we'll get that straightened out for next year.
Madam Chair, just one quick question.
Certainly, Mr. Sabelli, you have the
Are
floor.
we doing reviews or aren't we? That's the second, before you send out the email, what are we doing? Do you want performance reviews from everybody? People just that haven't had one in the last 6 months? Just, can you clarify that so we can, I've got a couple, I may have to write them, I may not. Can you just, before you finish up, so we can kind of finish this whole thing?
Great point. It's on my list. Thank you, Mr. Sabelli. Because I still don't understand how, I understand from Brian's perspective, the numbers and the pro rating, but I still don't understand the physical rollout.
Can we just do something with anybody that hasn't had one in the last 6 months? You do the performance review just so you have one in the file. I reviewed somebody in January. You guys approved it in February. I just had a person do it in May. There's not much for me to write in a review for you guys with COVID. I mean, if you want to see something, it's going to look exactly like the same. I don't even know if you want to do that, or just anybody in the past 6 months that's had one, will just go with Jay's formula and calculation and go. And, if you want to require the people the prior 6 months, so do it. I think you just got to clarify that so we all know, are we writing reviews or not?
I think
Yeah.
everybody should have a review redone. So if you did one in May, basically just copy the same thing and change the date, but hand it in, but they all need written reviews effective July 1st to get everybody in sync with this new process. Otherwise,
I
it's going to be
agree.
confusing. Everybody has to have the same. So
And if
unfortunately,
nothing-
there's a little more work for you, Paul, but hopefully it's not as many people.
No, not a
it could
problem,
take-
Dorian, as long as you guys understand, it's pretty much going to be the same. And then we'll put in 2.8% prorated and let Jay figure it out. Is that kind
Yeah.
of what we're doing?
I don't
Paul,
think you need
realistically, use
prorated.
what you had before and change the date.
Okay. If you're
Yeah.
good
Yeah, I
with
mean,
that,
if someone's reviewed in May,
Yeah,
it's
just change the
gonna be
date.
the same evaluation.
Right, exactly. Just change the date. Shouldn't take you more than a minute for each of those people.
Okay,
perfect. Madam Chair, just make sure that gets included in the email. That's all. That's all I
can we
ask.
back up for a minute, please? Because I'm the slow one here, and I'm the one who's going to be sending the message on behalf of the board. We're going to write to all reviewers. We're going to tell them we changed the adjustment. We're going to tell them we're rescinding marks. And again, I'm going to take a minute here to make sure I get this right. We're rescinding the 0 to 3 from December. We're proceeding with 2.8. Brian is going to give us how it's going to be prorated. And then, thank you, Paul, this last piece with actual physical reviews, because we've got a couple of issues. One, Personnel Board going back to seeing the previous year's review as we were supposed to. Are we just getting the new form? Are we getting the cover sheet? And who does this apply to? Is this people who are being reviewed in, I'm not sure I understand what guidance we're giving.
Every review has to have last year's performance, their entire evaluation attached to the new one. because that's what we requested.
So
They all
just
do.
the
So
cover
all these
sheet?
Last 18, we didn't get what we were supposed to get. So
Okay.
now they're gonna have to. So July 1st, everybody's performance reviews, the long one, we're getting all of them from last year.
When you say
everyone.
last year, do you mean all
The
reviews?
last one they did. The
Okay.
last long review. before we
FY20.
Changed the form. We should be getting that long review.
Okay, so let me back up. Do we want to tell people that all reviews from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
July 1st, 2019. Because I don't want to screw this up. I'm not going to see you again before. We're telling them all reviews that you submitted, department heads and boards and committees, between July 1st, 2019 and June 1st, 2020. You have to redo them,
June 30th.
including the previous year's review. And are they submitting the full review? And is the board going to look at it? Because we said we were
Yep.
only going to look at the new one page.
We get
We're
the
looking the
cover
whole-
sheet for the new review and the full last one for the full one for the prior.
Yes.
Well, we hadn't adopted the new tool as of July 1, 2019. That came in the spring. We approved that earlier. Some of
Right.
the earliest reviews of this period, we saw the whole review. So you want just the cover page of the new
For
performance
FY21.
review. Right?
Right.
So I'm writing to reviewers and I'm saying the new program is for all reviews you submitted between July 1st, 2019 and June 30th, 2020, we need you to redo them. We need you to send just the cover page from the new form and include the previous year's, the so-called FY19 review.
The long form of
So
the.
FY20.
FY20.
No,
No,
we're
FY19.
telling them to
19,
redo their
20.
FY20 reviews and attach just the cover sheet. Yeah, I don't think we're ready for prime time. I think someone needs to write this out and the board needs to review it again.
Betsy, the
Well,
other thing,
essentially, because what you're suggesting is so essentially you're suggesting that the FY19 reviews will now become public documents.
No, they would still be in the board packet as they always were.
I understand, but if you're sharing them amongst the board members and everything and the full reviews, they could be considered public documents.
No, we always got them. The history of this board since I've been on the board was we saw the full review and it went in a board packet and we didn't talk about it in a meeting.
I just think we need to be careful about that, just to check that.
How is this different? Okay, Mark, thank you
Because
for
it's
bringing that concern. How would this be different now?
It's different, well, because you stopped doing that after the guidance was provided from Labor Council.
No, that's not what happened.
Mm-mm.
But
Okay.
what happened is going back to September 1st of 2017, when I was appointed to the Personnel Board, I went to Mr. Hegarty and I went to the chair and I went to Vanessa and I said, it seems like we're at an awkward intersection of public records law and open meeting law. And I could see that the board never knew what to do with these. So from the first time I came on the board, I tried to get clarification. It had nothing to do with Town Labor Council. Town Labor Council came in after the Belter decision and actually did not provide clarification because he didn't really understand that the board doesn't generate reviews and Belter had to do with generating reviews. The bottom line is this is something that's been on the radar before and how it was always handled was under public records law, they are confidential and exempt. You can, exactly as Mark says, you can turn them in under open meeting law, you can turn them into a public record by talking about them. So that's why we've never talked about them. So yes, it is correct that we clarified that in our conversation, but this is something that the board has been receiving these reviews for, I don't know, as long as you've been here, right? I've only been on personnel 3 years.
Mhm. Yeah,
Vanessa,
In your own packet, yes.
in their
not
own
the
packet.
Packet.
For at least as long as Vanessa's been assisting the board, which goes back over a decade. So we would have to go back to having 2 packets, right? and the cover sheet is going, were we putting cover sheets in the public packet? No.
I don't think we were.
No.
It was part and parcel of the review.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
So that was only going to the board in your own board.
Okay.
no part of the review went into a public packet. That stayed just with the board.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I can't go on my computer, but I understand, Mark, it's a real concern, but I don't know how this was different. So I'm looking at our packet for May. And we've got a bunch, we've got 16 cover sheets. And they have comments on them. So I imagine we did not put these in a public packet. Does anybody have the capability to hop on their town
can do
site?
that.
Never part of the public packet, Betsy.
Okay,
And that's fine, Betsy. I stand corrected, but I just, like I said, to ensure that they don't, we don't start discussing them in a meeting and therefore open them up to becoming public documents.
yes, thank you, Mark. So I'm just hopping on my minutes for May. Sorry, I don't have them printed out in front of me. Since we adopted the new. I don't want to start playing around with my computer because then I'll lose my Zoom connection. My computer couldn't handle it. Hang on. Oh, we have them in the board packet. Hang on one second. I just want to confirm that we haven't. Yeah, so I'm looking back at some minutes. We put performance evaluation, the cover sheet only, in a separate board packet. So thank you, Mark. It is a concern, but it's something we've handled before. So I don't really know how the personnel board is supposed to be the ultimate arbiter of raises while not discussing raises. This is a problem. Like I said, I brought it up on my very first day on the board. It doesn't, without making them public. And there's nothing that says we can't make it public unless we're in one of those exemptions for crimes committed, lawsuits, mental health. Standard performance of an employee is not an exemption to the open meeting law, but under public records law, they're supposed to be kept confidential. So. So to get back to the guidance that we're giving departments, I really don't feel comfortable that I'm at a point where I understand what we're going to do, and I think the board should revisit it. I
Okay.
think I should draft something, talk to Brian, and then we need to have another meeting to make sure it speaks to everyone's concerns.
Betsy, one thing that you mentioned, your wording was that you were rescinding the 0 to 3% annual adjustment. I don't think
Yes.
we're rescinding that. I think that we're deferring it.
No, we vote an annual adjustment per fiscal year. So the 0 to 3% for FY21 is off the table. It is rescinded, and we're revoted a 2.8.
I see what he's saying, though, the word rescinded and deferred.
It's not deferred. It'll be back on the table this fall for the FY22 annual adjustment, but it's off the table for FY21, which is what the only thing it was. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with him. I just like the word deferred better because it
I
means
do.
the exact same thing. It just sounds like, just sounds a lot better. We're deferring it until the fall, or we're now just going to take it away from you and we're going to re-implement it in the fall is rescinded. Deferred just means we're pushing it out.
We rescinded it. We changed our vote. It disappeared. We voted last year what the annual adjustment would be for FY21. And we're now saying we are no longer in a position to do 0 to 3. It's gone. We've replaced it with 2.8. In the fall, or when we get around to it, we'll start to take it up again. And if Brian's correct, we won't be looking anywhere near at 3. So I don't want to say 0 to 3 is going to be on the table. The annual, what we could say, what I'm comfortable saying is that we will be considering having a merit performance component in a range. And we'll take this up again next fall. But I think the 0 to 3 is gone. And it's confusing if you say it isn't. I don't know, Barry, lawyer, help me out here.
I was gonna say, could we just say reconsidered
Okay,
instead of rescinded? Because that's really what we've done. We've reconsidered our original
Okay.
position.
will do. It's reconsidered. So, and as for the process, I still don't have a clear handle on what we're asking for. So we can do one of two things. Stay and hash it out, or I can meet with Brian, Mark, if he wants to be involved, add Brian, or Brian can just send me his component. I can work it into a whole and the board can take a look at that. I'm not comfortable sitting here that I can accurately reflect exactly how this works. And I know from experience, just on smaller things, when you try, and Barry, I'm sure you can speak to this as an attorney, an accomplished attorney. When you go to reduce these things to writing, the devil's in the details always. And my interpretation and language may be very different than how it sounded in your heads. For example, the word rescinded. So I'm happy to meet again in very short time. I can send a short email to people after I speak with Vanessa, either today or tomorrow, short email saying guidance is coming soon.
I think that'd be fine.
Does that work for you guys? I really don't feel like I have a handle on how this works. Every time somebody says something back to me, it gives me a new perspective.
Right.
So if somebody feels they can encapsulate it sitting here right now, I'm happy to spend the time doing that, whatever the sense of the board is. If someone wants to try to put this in format for me, I'm taking notes and I'm happy to do that.
I'm happy to sit here all day, then I don't have to have blood work done.
Okay,
I have another meeting I gotta get going to.
I have to also, but
Barry, what is your preference?
I mean, you're the one writing it. If you're not crystal clear on what it is you're trying to convey, then, I think we need to either discuss.
Well, is everybody
it
else
further
crystal
or-
clear? Are you crystal clear? Then you could write it, because it's just, maybe I'm just dumb.
Well, I'm crystal clear on what it is physically that the managers are supposed to be submitting.
Okay, so tell me what that is, please, and I'll write it down.
Okay, they're supposed to be submitting the cover sheet of the new review. Let's use the words new, the new review. So the one that's going to be done for July 1st. We'll see the cover sheet of that one and the entire last review that was done.
A
Okay.
long review.
The law, right, the law.
So anyone who just had like a February, March, April, May one with the one page, that's not what we want. We want the one previous. We want the last long review.
Okay, I'm clear on that. It's the cover page of the new review, the one we adopted on X date, I can fill in the date, plus the entire review previously. And for what period? Is this July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2020,
Correct.
AKA FY20,
Yes.
okay? So they are actually giving us a cover sheet for FY20, even though some of us have previously given us a full review for FY20. And they're going to give us the entire review from FY19, basically. Okay? And we're then magically going to give everybody a raise retro to July 1st.
Well, prorated.
Prorated, not retroed.
Okay. And this is the part Brian explains to me.
Yeah.
But it's not really going to happen on July 1st because today is July 1st.
Right.
So
It'll be
what's the,
retroactive, but prorated.
It'll be prorated retroactive to July 1.
Yeah.
so it is retro.
Only because we're not getting all the reviews for July 1, right?
Only because it's today
Gotcha.
and that not everything's going to get processed today.
Okay, what is the deadline for this?
Tomorrow.
No, not the deadline for me sending. When is the deadline for the department heads and the reviewers?
What about the end of next week? This is July 4th, week and weekend. we're giving, it's a Wednesday, it'll give them this week and then all in next week.
I think
I think
that's
that's
fair
a
enough.
little quick, Jay.
Yeah,
This is,
you
a
need more
lot of
time.
folks are taking time off. Yesterday was the last day of the fiscal year. I would ask the board respectfully to give a little bit more time.
So
Yeah.
we'll go- so go
Okay,
another week
this
out.
doesn't, guys, this doesn't speak to, I'm sorry, I apologize. We're asking them to resubmit their FY20 reviews with FY19 attached. So we can give a 2.8, but 2.8 is for FY21. So this, we have to explain to them that these reviews are sufficing for the reviews for FY21 as well.
This will be their last review until next July.
Okay,
Until
this is
July 1.
this is beyond my capabilities. I still don't understand why somebody who is due for review next May isn't going to get any performance review this whole year. They're just getting a 2.8. What if they stop working for the town? I don't even get what the mechanism is to look backwards. What if somebody quits in January?
I'm not understanding what your confusion is.
We're going to give them raises for the period July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, AKA FY21, based on their last review and a peek back to the year before, right? We've
Well, I
solved
mean,
the
you-
problem of performance because it's just going to be a 2.8. But we're not nobody's gonna be reviewed this whole year with a fresh review?
You're going 2021, you're going out too far. Everybody will have a review. It'll start, everybody's new review period starts on basically today. Their next
Okay,
review will be next year this time.
Yeah,
If they leave in
But Vanessa
January,
told us
they
last-
don't get another increase.
Vanessa told me, I suggested this last meeting and Vanessa said, we can't look at reviews on July 1st and give any money for them because it's beyond the fiscal year. So you've really lost me. Are you saying we're gonna give raises on July 1st for the previous fiscal year? I was told last meeting we couldn't do that.
No, because technically we've already given raises for the past fiscal year, the one that ended yesterday,
yeah. This is for the year going forward. Betsy.
prospective.
You guys have completely lost me. So someone either is gonna have to chair the committee or write the memo because I do not understand what we're talking about. We're having them resubmit old reviews to justify raises for this year. We're giving on July 1st, prorated, but retroactive. How can it be retroactive if it's for this coming year, FY21?
Okay, you keep saying we're asking them to submit old reviews, only for people who have been reviewed like in the last few months. Someone who was
That's not what we
reviewed-
said, Barry.
No, no,
According
no.
to this, that's not what I
No.
understood.
If someone was reviewed last August, they're going to get essentially a whole new review.
Right.
We're not, if you heard people saying, we're just asking them to take what they did for everybody and just resubmit it, that certainly was not my intention.
Well, we need to
We're
give
talking
that,
about people who were very recently reviewed. And then, there's really nothing to add. But for people who were reviewed in February or December or August, I would expect to see a new review for those
Absolutely.
people.
Right.
okay, somebody
Right.
needs to write this out because I've been writing down and saying what I wrote down and that wasn't in it. So I don't know if this is a consequence of being on Zoom. I think I would be having the same issues if I was looking at all of you.
Oh, I
This
have a
is,
question.
yes, Vanessa.
Just the one thing that that I'm still a little bit confused about is, and I think this might crystallize, Betsy, how to frame this memo to the staff is, Jay at one point had talked about, if someone just had a review, as Barry was just saying, we don't want them to have to go redo that all over again if it's very fresh. So at one point, he has suggested, okay, February 1st as sort of a, you
Just a
know,
cutoff date. We have to pick a some date.
that's my hope is that the board could agree on, you know, one particular date, and anyone before that date, you know, would be expected to do a brand new fresh review. Anyone after that date, you know, it might be just refiling the recent review, but that would be my request, that the board illustrate this by picking a particular date that a review was done in the past year.
So if I understand this, we're gonna tell we're gonna tell department heads and boards and committees, remember, we have elected officials that need to do this, that they need to resubmit FY 20 reviews. That's July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. Just the cover sheet of the new form with attaching the previous review before that. And if the employee was already reviewed between February 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2020, you don't have to reevaluate them, correct? Is that where we're at? Okay,
Everybody should be getting reevaluated to get everybody into sync for the July 1st for the change. What we said was if they did the reviews and we used the dates February 1st to June 30th, if they had a review during that time, the manager of that department can take a look at that review that was already done, like Paul Sabelli. If that is status quo and there's no real changes, just photocopy that, change the date on it and hand it in so it's an up-to-date July 1st.
Right.
What we're trying to do is get everybody on the same page, the same date.
what part of what I just said is not what you're saying? Because I'm the one who supposedly, I'm not sure, is gonna be writing this out. And I just said what my understanding was. And now I don't understand if you're changing it or if I correctly encapsulated what you said.
Read it again, Betsy.
I'm not reading it. It came out of my head.
I have about 5 minutes left or 4 minutes.
And I also don't understand that if we can come to a common understanding with me of what we're asking them to submit, these are going to suffice as the FY 21 reviews and the basis for the 2.8, or are they a reconsideration of the previous reviews? I don't understand. And if these are supposed to be in lieu of FY 21 reviews, you've just lost me. We're not going to get any more reviews for anybody for FY 21. We're just going to give everybody a 2.8
Yes.
next year on July 1st.
No,
No, this year on July 1st.
Right.
Today.
What if somebody,
Literally
okay,
today.
so is it, this, I guess this relates back to the fact that in previous meetings, it has been revealed to me that there's no correlation between the Harper's system, our payroll system, and SAP. A human being, either Vanessa or myself, has to communicate with Kristen whenever this board takes an action. So there's no automatic cognizance. So what if somebody leaves town employee in September? They'll never get reviewed. We won't know what they, from July 1st to
It's-
December 1st, if they had,
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
Every employee in the town now has a start date. Let's say they're all new hires and they started on July 1st. If
Okay.
they leave in September, they wouldn't get a raise anyways. They'd have to wait another year. Everybody is now on July 1. Everybody's
who's the-
start date is technically July 1. If they leave prior to July 1, 2021, they don't get an increase.
okay.
'Cause they don't
I
work
do
yet.
not have a sufficient handle on all aspects of this to write such a memo. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Brian can sit down and explain the numbers to me, but I've seen too many things that haven't happened correctly over the last 3 years not to know that we need to nail this down. And we're gonna have questions from department heads. So I'm not sure the best way to proceed. I am not equal to this task right now because I do not understand it. And I promised you all, I would no longer undertake to do something that I don't understand. And I don't get this. It's not clear in my head how this rolls out. So we can schedule another meeting in a week and I can write down and talk to everybody But I don't know how to do this per open meeting law unless somebody else wants to take it on.
I think you need to reschedule for next week.
Yep, I do too.
I'm perfectly happy that Jay sat down originally with Mark and Brian to come up with how this rolls out. And then they got off on another tangent because of the performance. If they want to go back to writing this out, I'm happy to look at something that Jay comes up with or Barry. Y'all seem to get it except for me. I seem to be the only one who, and that's because with my mind, when I send out a directive to the department managers, it has to be written so a fifth grader could follow it, because that's what I would want. I don't want to send something out with holes in it and then get back 30, what? And I'm not demeaning in any way our employees. If I can't explain it to a third grader, I don't really understand it.
So
And
I
right
would-
now, I don't understand it.
Madam Chair, I would suggest that either
Yep.
Barry or Jay sit with Brian Ballantyne and put together a draft so that the board has something to look at and it can kind of work from that rather than working from what you're writing down or what someone's saying and not. So, and if you want to schedule a meeting next week, I think that's good because we need to kind of get this moving as soon as
Great.
possible. So whoever wants to sit, I think with Brian Ballantyne, because Brian can lay out how this is all going to work for the increase piece. I'm not going to talk about my understanding of what Dorianne, had brought up about the 19 reviews and everything, because I understand it, but I'm not going to say what I understand because I think that may convolute the discussion further. So
Don't do that.
yeah, I think that would probably be what I would suggest. And then everybody can have that in front of them and you can work from that document. Maybe that will help see, because again, Betsy, I'm a visual person too. So I prefer to see it.
Thank you.
Unfortunately,
And I have, go ahead,
I-
Dave, sorry.
sorry, I have to jump off. I have to interview a candidate for a scientific position at 2:30.
Okay, Jay,
I
Jay,
think
what's your
that's
I don't want to
schedule?
leave this guy hanging.
What's your schedule like? Are there any dates you couldn't make a meeting in the next 2 weeks?
Let me look at my calendar next week. I think I'm pretty wide open.
It would be hard to notice a meeting with the holiday coming up. I know Jim Haggerty's off. I don't even know if we have time to notice a meeting.
On Tuesday at 2:30, I cannot do. Other than that, Thursday at 9, I can't do. And Friday at 10:30, I can't.
Wait a minute. Okay. Tuesday, July
Tuesday,
July
yeah,
7th, you
the
can't
7th at
do?
2:30, I'm booked. The 9th at 9 to 10, I'm booked. And the 10th at 10:30, I'm booked. Everything else I can move.
I'm not sure. Vanessa, help me out here. Can we schedule a meeting for July 8th? The
Either,
clerk-
Is that Wednesday? Yes.
just send me an email and I'll accept it.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, thank
Okay.
you. Thanks very
Thanks.
much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
we have enough
until the,
notice?
End of the day tomorrow to post a new meeting for next week.
Because I know Jim Haggerty's office sent out something about meetings. All right. So how does the board feel about Wednesday, July 8th? At noon? Does that give everybody time enough to do whatever they're gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only issue. I'm happy to work with Jay and Brian, whoever, to put something together. Question is timing.
Do you want to push it off to the following week, Monday or Tuesday?
That would make me more comfortable because I'm going to be traveling next Monday and Tuesday, so I probably wouldn't have anything by Wednesday.
Do you want to just keep to Wednesday, July 15th at noon?
That works for me.
Dorianne, does that work for you?
Yep.
Dave,
Yep. Yes.
Vanessa, as
Yeah.
far as you know? Yeah, and I'm happy. I under open meeting law, anybody on the board can call me and explain anything they want to me. I don't have to deliberate on it. I just have, so if somebody wants to call me in the meantime, I can't flesh this out with enough specificity to take responsibility. I'll take care of communicating the Well, since we're gonna meet in 2 weeks, I'll just go ahead and draft something to communicate all the other changes to
I know,
folks.
but is that soon enough for Mark? Because Mark wanted us to move it along. Is it better to do it on Monday?
Yeah, no, I think
Is that
that's still,
okay?
yeah, that works.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right, because you had said you wanted it soon as we could. So, all right, just
No,
double
I-
checking
I-
for Mark.
If the
reason-
board wants me to, I can still send out an email to everybody saying, because the department heads need guidance. Paul and Brian have spoken to this. So if you want me to send something out that says we reconsidered, it's gonna be a flat 2.8, and we're continuing to, do the synchronization part, I can send that out,
Yeah, I
and the
think that's
details will
fine.
follow.
Yeah.
I think that would be,
Okay. And I can run that email by, so who's gonna be the point person on explaining this to me? I can run that email by,
Mark, I nominate Mark.
now, who for the board is gonna be doing this? Is this Barry or Jay?
Barry.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah,
I think it can actually be Barry and Jay, as long as you leave me out. 2 people can talk. Okay. Thank you all for your patience. Let's wrap this up.
We didn't do anniversary date, or did I somehow miss
Okay,
that? We
hang
need
Hang on
to
a
do that.
second. Hang on a second. All right. So we are tabling, we have, looking at 5B1 and 2. We are tabling B1 for further discussion. We are tabling B2 for further discussion. And we have reconsidered the annual adjustment. We did 6A and B. I'm going to, given the lateness of the hour, it's 2:35, I'm going to table 6C, 1, 2, and 3. And we'll revisit that again, I think probably at our August meeting,
Okay.
because that's looking ahead. Is it the sense of the board to confine the July 15th meeting to the discussion of performance evaluations, raises, and related matters? Would that be the sense of the board?
Yeah,
I
Not
think
take
so.
new
Yes.
requests?
Yep.
Okay. But I note that Vanessa did send out an email to department heads saying we were talking about this, so maybe we'll do that again for July 15th. All right. Any other business before the board? Anybody have anything that came up? All
Nope.
right. Board calendar, July 15th at noon.
no.
Do you want to go ahead and schedule that regular August meeting so I can tell people when they can bring matters before us again?
Okay.
What looks good for you guys for
The
Wanna do
second
August
Wednesday of the
12th?
month would be August 12th.
August 5th or 12th?
I'm
12.
fine for either. 12?
well,
12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, August 12th at noon.
Okay.
Okay. And after we hang up, Vanessa, if you could just hang out so we could discuss some admin details, that'd be great. All right. All right, everybody. I think we are adjourned. Thanks for your patience with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Betsy. Everybody
you.
stay well.
Thank you,
Stay
Dave.
healthy, everybody.
All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you back here on the 15th. We are
Okay.
gavelled out, adjourned at 2:37 PM.
Bye.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Are you still
Oh.
there?
Yep, I just have to stop YouTube.
Okay, take your time, let me know. So I think all I need is we need to get straight these emails if we're sending out notices. So I currently have 2 distribution lists. One is department heads and one is chairs of boards and committees with SAP employees. So I could send you the list of who I currently have, and you could just correct it based on, talking to Tom when you get a chance.
Yeah, a lot of people at their July meeting, Betsy, do their chairman vote. So Tom may need just a little bit of time to confer with the town clerk's office to see if any of the chairs have changed.
Okay,
But
so,
he'll be back tomorrow from vacation, so I can talk to him about that this week.
so today is the first. Would you advise, I know you have more experience communicating with department heads. Should I just wait a couple days, or do you think I should tell whoever I have on my current list, even if it's
I
not?
would tell whoever you have because they can always forward it if they think,
Okay.
someone else might take over as chair.
Okay, so it's gonna be 2.8%. Synchronization to July 1st,